So time is short, so I'll get right into it. Our first speaker is Ольga Филатова. She's going to be speaking to us on cetacean monitoring in Берингия National Park, Chukotka. Olga?
Thank you, John.
And let me welcome all of you. Before I get started, I'm lucky to be the first speaker on marine protected areas. Let me describe the role of these areas, not in the protection, but in the research of cetaceans in Russia. Because the Far East, we don't have very many organizations that are interested in cetaceans research and where you can come and start working. And if you organize an expedition and if you go nowhere, it creates incredible difficulties. When we were invited to Berringer National Park, it turned out to be a success story. And I'm employed as a scientific advisor in this national park, and I will describe our activities. Berringer National Park is located in Chukotka. And there are several clusters of this park, but we operate in this red circle, Nevian Cape, and it is interesting. The area is interesting by having fjords, deep water fjords, the entire water zone around. This is a shallow water shelf, and the maximum depth is 50 meters. But in the strait and fjords, the depth is more than 100 meters. That impacts the biodiversity level, of course. And we study three major species: humpback, orca, and gray whale. And our goal is to study the ecology and assess the status of these three species. If we take a look at the distribution of humpback whales across this area, we can see it mostly utilizes the deep water fjords. And this one is shallow, but they prefer the ones with the deeper water, and central also deep water part of the strait. We identify them individually by the color of the tail, lower part of the tail fin. And in catalog, we keep 153 individual whales. We compare them against catalogs from other parts of the Far East of Russia. And we found repeated sightings with Commander, Kamchatka whales, and we compared it against the international database, and neuron network does it, AI does it, automatically matches the whales and Aleutski Island. And in the breeding sites, they stay to Hawaii's area during winter time. And humpback whales occurrence varies a lot throughout the years. When we came in 2017, we had a big gathering of humpback whales in the same spot. They were concentrated, and we identified more than 80. And next year, 2018, we had even a greater number, but in 2019, they disappeared. They didn't come to the same plot. And it was a mass death of seabirds, so mass dying out. Something happened. And in 2020, the situation is improved, but still not as high number as it used to be. Between 2017 and 18, the distribution had changed. In 2017, they were tending to stay in the southern part, but in 2018, they moved to the north. And when we photographed them during the feeding, and we just watched them pulling out fish, and we could photograph them, the fish was like mackerel, but in 2018 it was different. And we took samples of feces, and they mostly ate krill. Krill was found in the feces. And when we checked the traces of isotope of nitrogen, and it was highest in 2018. And so they switched from the small size fish to krill. And also we did a genetic analysis, and each of these circles And this is the study of mitochondrial DNA, free Russian regions. And also we use the literature data, international data. And Chukotka is closer to Aleut Islands, and the breeding areas, it tends to Mexico and Hawaii. And in the photograph, you can see they come to Hawaii, but maybe from Alaska, they also come in, so they didn't find any similarity. One more species that we study is a gray whale, and it is distributed in a different way, and the bentafog, and it is tending to stay in the shallow waters closer to the edges of the straits. We also identify them by the color, and in our catalog, we keep 85 individuals, and the occurrence sightings is not so variable as for humpback whale, but an interesting thing was described by Tatiana Pridorожная, and many whales have fidelity to specific areas in the water zone. One whale throughout the season can sit in the same bay, and it's only 2 kilometers long. It's strange for marine whales. They tend to move long distance. Maybe this is related to benthos and having stable resource base for feeding. One more areas of our research is playing the shipping noise, and I will have individual presentation in parallel section. It will be devoted to shipping noise specifically, and here let me mention just the outcomes of our study. We discovered that in some cases the whales, they statistically different respond to the appearance of the noise. So we can detect changes in their behavior, and they are statistically meaningful. And this is a criteria for the behavioral reaction. One more species we study is the orca killer whale, and there are two forms. Green is a crab eating and fish eating, and so the distribution is different. And the crab eating, they are in the deep waters, and fish eating, they prefer shallow water. So in our area, we just flesh eating orcas, and there are just a few of them. Over the course of 4 years, we identified only 25 orcas, and resighting rate is high. When we resight them, the group of killer whales, more than half of them are familiar to us. So we can say that this area, the abundance is just several dozens, no more than that. And also we found 3 sightings in other areas of Chukotka. And so you can see with arrows, Kaluzhny Island, the same individuals, but with the southern areas, we also have catalogs, and there are no overlap with the southern orcas. Also, we did stable isotope analysis to identify the menu, what they eat, the flesh eating, the highest trophic level. So isotope nitrogen level reflects the level of the food chain, and you can see crab eating, fish eating, and different color means different regions. And you can see the highest concentration of nitrogen isotope. And in the end, I want to share an interesting discovery, an interesting finding that we made in 2018. Over the course of 1 week in the fjord, along with the humpback, we had a Pacific right whale next to them. And it is a remarkable thing, it's a strange thing, because the most northern sightings of the Pacific right whale, they are registered in Commander Island water zone, but in American water, the critical habitats, the southern eastern part of Bering Sea. So for us, this was the most northern confirmed sighting of Pacific right whale. We don't know why it happened. Maybe this is due to climate change, maybe something else. So that's it.
Thank you, Olga. I think, are there some questions? I may need help with the questions if there are.
Well, I don't see any questions in the chat. So.
John, we have a question from Maria Gavrila.
Thank you, Olga, for your interesting presentation. In what way did you collect the data for the distribution map? Are these visual observations of the identified animals or something else? Not always we can individually identify these whales. We are on a board in the sea. Once we encounter a whale and we take a GPS coordinates and trying to photograph. Sometimes we photograph, sometimes GPS does not work. And we just know that we saw a humpback whale, but mostly, yes, visual observations. And these are not transects, right? These are just all the encounters. It's not a vast water zone. Yes, we just travel by boat and we register all the encounters, all the sightings with the whales.
I think there's another question, but it's
yes, this is from Sergei Rizanov. Have you witnessed the hunting by orcas? Yes, there were such orcas hunt, and they hunted seals mostly, and it happens underwater. Without experience, it's difficult to capture it. We see them diving, doing something underwater. If you come real close, you can find blood maybe. And once we managed to put together these fragments, once we identified by genetic, by the intestine part, that it was a seal. There was one time when we watched the orcas hunting whales. No, they were not hunting whales exactly, but the whales were just nearby. And the orcas decided not to attack these whales because they were showing their tail to them, so making it uncomfortable for the orcas to hunt the whales.
Okay, thanks, Olga. Other questions? I think we're coming up on time here. Okay, there it is. And I enjoyed hearing about the northern right whale. I'm going to put you in touch with the folks in my lab who study North Pacific right whales. They'll be interested in that side. Thank you very much for your great talk.